Hello and welcome back to another Rush Duel Links deck profile. Today we're taking a look at the boogeyman of this game, which is Dragoncasters. So Dragoncasters is a deck that a lot of people thought were going to be meta in Duel Links the same way it was meta in the Rush physical release, but that was primarily due to the power of Dark Revelation. We do not have Dark Revelation, which meant a lot of people suddenly were like, well, maybe Dragoncasters won't be as strong because without the power of a mirror force behind you, why would you bother playing the Spellcasters with dragons? And the answer is Seven's Road Magician. Seven's Road Magician is a decent monster. It's not the best boss monster, but 2100 that can boost itself up to a possible 39 is still very good. And it does couple quite well with Seven's Road Witch, which can cheat it out, as well as give Seven's Road Witch itself a boost. So it's pretty good. Other than that, the only real reason to play the kind of Spellcaster engine is going to be something like Mystic Dealer, which can sort your hand out occasionally, and then something like Recovery Force, which can give you a draw as well as get some of your monsters back into your deck. The first thing we'll take a look at is our skill. So the skill doesn't actually matter in this deck. This is basically just a good stuff pile deck, which means we could play pretty much any skill we want, but the one we've gone for, because I think it's the most consistent, is Legend Draw. So it can be activated before your normal draw and turn 4 onward. If your opponent has a face-up level 7 or higher monster and you have no monsters on your field once per duel, one of the cards from your normal draw will be a Legend monster. This means you can force your Summoned Skull straight into your hand, which can be a godsend. Sometimes you'll be in a situation where you need to clear your opponent's high-level monster, otherwise you will just straight up lose, and you can basically force the issue, get rid of the opponent's monster. Sometimes that'll mean crashing into something like a Dragius. But one thing to take note of is Legend Draw can backfire. It will force a Summoned Skull into your hand, but if you draw just a bunch of other high-level monsters, you then don't really have a play. Or maybe you now can't empty your hand, which is also just as bad, and you basically end up with a bunch of bricks in your hand, which is not ideal. So it's to be used kind of sparingly, but whenever it does work, it usually will either break a game state, which you really desperately need, or it can just win the game. So Legend Draw, I think, is the best generic skill in terms of just trying to either not lose or try to win. Whereas there are some of the other skills you can use, like the Hammer Crush Deal, gives you a 29 card deck. That also can add like a little bit of consistency. And then the only other skill is probably Life Point Gain, which you can use every single game, which is decent. And gaining that 1000 is relevant, but a lot of the time that 1000 doesn't make enough of an impact, in my opinion, to use it over Legend Draw. But again, you still can. Like, the point is, we don't need a specific skill for this deck. This is just the one we decided to pick. So going through the card by card, we have Multi-Strike Dragon Dragius, the best card in Rush Duel Links. In a vacuum, this card is incredible, which is why in any deck that's not being limited on the type of monsters they can use, Multi-Strike Dragon Dragius will be in there. 2500 attack is huge, milling a card is great, and being able to attack twice is bonkers, especially since it can attack directly, which means this is the best way to get to your opponent's life points. Next up, we have the Seven's Road Magician. Again, just a fantastic generic card. Milling cards is great, gaining attack is great, and we are again playing all of the different attributes, which means this thing can get all the way up to that 39, which can beat over any threat. Being able to clear an opponent's Dragius without having to get rid of one of your own cards is always going to be a plus. Next up, Currybot. Currybot is not necessarily mandatory, but it is extremely good in this deck because if we do draw 2 high-level monsters, we want to be able to summon both of them, and Currybot is it's kind of the only real way we have to do that, so that's why it's really good. We can summon it out, pay 500, get another card back to our hand. Then if we have 2 high-level monsters, and we have a total of 4 low-level monsters, we can summon out our 4 low-level monsters, tribute 2 for one high-level monster, and tribute 2 for another high-level monster, and then bam, we have both of them on the field. Being able to summon out double Dragius, or a Dragius and a Seven's Road can be incredible. Next up, Seven's Road Witch. Now, originally I didn't think this card was going to see a ton of play in this deck, just because cheating out the Seven's Road Magician is like fine, but it's not crazy. The reason this card is actually really, really good is because it allows this deck to play over Yami Ruler. And that's something we've seen. Yami Ruler decks have started to really take a decline in popularity and a decline in win rate because now everyone is playing cards specifically in the deck to out it. So for this deck, that is the Seven's Road Witch, which will let us cheat out the Seven's Road Magician, which can then easily clear over the Yami Ruler. We're also playing the Fire Golem, which is also really good into the Yami Ruler. That means if we already have a Dragius set up, all we need to do is summon a Fire Golem, and then we just deal with the Yami Ruler problem immediately. So fantastic cards. Next up, we have Thunder the Thunder. Again, really good. Being able to get cards out of our hand occasionally is very, very strong, especially in a format where we're usually ending our turn with cards in our hand because we're not just throwing down all of our back row because we're not really playing any. But being able to weaken a monster's attack by 300 is always going to be good, and is a light monster, which is our second light monster after Dragius, which is still usable, right? We still want to have lights in the graveyard, so it's decent to get that off. Again, being able to weaken your opponent's Dragius down from 25 so you can attack over it with your own Dragius is always going to be incredible. So really, really valuable and always going to be a staple until we get more sets. We've already talked about Fire Golem a bit, but again, being able to lower your opponent's defense can be very relevant in the right matchups, especially against Yami Ruler. Next up, Mystic Dealer. Again, people tend to shotgun this card, and that's not really how you want to use it. You want to use this effect if you're going to either die the next turn so you desperately need something, or if you contribute it away after you've used its effect. If you summon this out, use its effect, draw another card, and then are able to just tribute it over for a Dragius or a Seven's Road, or even a Summon Skull, it is fantastic to be used like that. But what a lot of people tend to do is they'll just summon it, use its effect, and just end their turn with a 1000 attack monster in attack mode, and then just take a crap ton of damage for no reason, which is the wrong way to play it. Also, it's a water attribute, which means great for Seven's Road. Summon Skull, we've already talked about, but again, 2500 attack for only one tribute is great. The primary best way to use this is going to be as your third monster. So we summon like a Dragius and a Seven's Road, or double Dragius. We then normal summon a summonable monster, tribute over that for our Summon Skull, and bam, we have 3 high-level 2500 attack monsters, which is fantastic. Next up, we have our 1500s. Now, this is probably the weakness of this deck, is we're only actually on 6 copies of 1500 attack monsters, which is a little bit low. That means the aggro variant of the deck that's generally playing things like either the Noodles or Prix Katana, which does play all of the 1500s, is a little bit more powerful more of the time. But by only playing these two, we get a Dark Spellcaster, which again is fine, we get our Earth Monster in Gazelle, and we're not playing any Dragorite, which means with no other dragons, the only thing Phantom Bind will hit our Multi-Strike Dragon Dragius with is if we have another Multi-Strike Dragon Dragius in the graveyard. And again, Phantom Bind typically doesn't do too much to Seven's Road Magician because its attack is going to be so big that even if it loses 1000 attack, it's still going to be big enough to attack over what it needs to hit over. Finally, we have Spell Archer, which again is not a very good card, let's be honest. But we needed a wind monster, and we would like to have another Spellcaster because that works quite well with our Mystic Dealer. So we went with Spell Archer. Again, this is kind of a flex slot. You could replace this with Winged Dragon Guardian of the Fortress if you really want like a 1400 attacker. You can't put Torna in this deck because obviously we're playing the 3 Dragius, and I don't think we'd want that many high-level monsters in the deck anyway, but this is basically just the wind slot. You could also change one of these for maybe a second copy of Recovery Force if you want, but since we're not all in on Spellcasters, I didn't want to use 2 Recovery Force and just kind of brick on it too much. So this is the deck. It is powerful. We managed to take second place at a tournament with this deck, which unfortunately we weren't recording all of our games. We were only recording our games in case we had to prove that we won, in case there was some sort of argument going on. So we didn't end up recording all of our games, and our final game was on stream, so we didn't bother recording that. So we don't actually have the finals, but we did get 2-0'd in the finals, and it wasn't pretty. We kind of just bricked 2 games, but still, fantastic deck, really, really powerful. Again, we took second place at an event, which means that just goes to show how good this deck is. It's also very, very easy to play. This is probably the easiest deck to play in Rush Duel Links. It's great to ladder with, and this is what we actually do play against quite a lot in the ladder. So let's fire on into the replays, and I can show you what I've been talking about.